So next to me there's Larry Rosin. He's a radio researcher from Edison Research and totally into the radio business. And
Yes.
we just talked a little bit about the passionate things about radio and and streaming services like Spotify and also podcasts and new things for the radio industry. So if you see the perspective of the future of radio, how is the shape of the future for radio stations?
Well, there's sort of radio and radio stations, and I would probably make a distinction between the two. What's happening is the world of audio, as I like to position it, is just changing, and it's like everything's changing. And radio is a part of the world of audio, and the challenge for radio stations is to try to capture the entire world of audio and not just rely on people listening on FM or DAB or whatever they're listening on, but to understand that there's a much broader world of audio that they need to be a part of.
But isn't it like that, like newspaper organizations in the last 10 years were just sticking to the paper, and radio stations right now, they still stick to the transmission functionality like FM or AM or DAB Plus or something like that, and not consider themselves as an audio company?
Right, and that's the challenge. That's what I'm here to talk to this conference about, which is the challenge for radio to think of themselves that way. Radio comes to this challenge with a lot of advantages. It has talent and it has studios and it has sales and it knows how to monetize audio content. And so it really should be able to develop these things, but it has to do what you said. It has to rethink of itself as not just FM broadcasting or AM or DAB or whatever it is, but as a bigger part of the audio universe, and instead of saying Spotify, that's totally different, or YouTube, that's totally different, or anything else someone could podcasts, anything else someone might listen to, that's just a whole different thing. They've got to take the attitude of, no, we have to be part of that. If people are going to spend time with audio, a radio station's goal should be to try to maximize how much of that time is spent with them.
So when Spotify came into the podcast business, I think podcast came into a new dimension. Also, when Apple released podcast statistics last year, where you see the duration of listening time, it came to a new dimension. But radio stations still work quite locally. Mm-hmm. So they are not a big network, or they don't work together as they could. Is that a problem for involving new business models?
Well, if you look at some of the successful podcasts, they're not always being driven by big multinational companies. They're often hobbyists who have made amazing podcasts. So I think every radio station, if they want to make good podcasts, should have the talent. But it is a slightly different skill set from just being a DJ on the air or something like that, or a breakfast team or anything else. So I don't think that radio companies should psych themselves out from being podcasters. What they shouldn't do, though, is just take content that was over the air and think that people will listen to that, necessarily catch up radio, or just want to hear this morning's morning show, because that gets stale pretty fast. The life of that is maybe 5 or 6 hours or something like that. Whereas podcasting is usually about something that has a little bit more lasting quality to it, something you could listen to a week later, a month later, a year later.
Again and again, people like you and me are sitting on panels at conferences like this and giving recommendations to radio stations that they heard and heard and heard again and again and again, year by year, and nothing's changing. But you, as one of the research guys, what is the user behavior? What tells the user? What did the user tell us what they want to listen to?
Right. I mean, we do a ton of research in the United States about the whole audio universe. And people still listen to a lot of radio, and people like radio. There's this attitude of no one listens to the radio anymore. And that's just completely false. The radio is by far the biggest piece of the audio pie, much bigger than things like Spotify, or in the US we have Pandora and stuff like that, or Apple Music, any of those kinds of things, much bigger than people listening to their digital files.
So they don't need to change anything.
No, they absolutely need to change. It goes down a little bit every year, but it's still the biggest piece. And so they shouldn't allow people to position radio as just this, yesterday kind of thing. It has been a medium, but like I've been saying, it should look at all those other pieces of the pie, and maybe not digital files, which is a whole different business, but everything else, podcasting, streaming, all those kinds of other forms of audio consumption, radio should be getting involved with. And radio's belatedly in America gotten excited about podcasting, really not producing their own so much as purchasing or doing cooperative deals with podcasters that already exist, so they're trying to sort of co-opt it, and we'll see how that plays itself out.
Yeah. When I attended a radio conference this year, it was not about getting the streaming rights of the music. It was not getting about great content and owning the content as a part of an innovation and part of the business model, which I think is wrong. But it was much more about, wow, there's Alexa, there's Siri, there's new things, and now this is audio.
Right.
Is that like blink in the eye somewhere far away that could be interesting, like, wow, everyone owns now Alexa and this is our business in the future, instead of doing the basics?
I'm a big believer in these smart speakers. I think they are going to really rapidly proliferate, and part of the data I'm going to show in a couple hours here at this conference is that a very large percentage of Americans say they don't have a single radio in their household.
So this will be the main transmission media?
I think it's the only hope that if people are going to listen to radio in their homes, no one's buying a dedicated device called a radio anymore. I mean, you can't even find one in the stores if you wanted to. So there's less and less at-home listening going on because many people just don't even have a radio in their home. They couldn't listen if they wanted to unless they streamed it, brought it through their computer or something, but that doesn't sound that good. Smart speakers really create an opportunity for people to listen, but they have to choose you, right? They can say to Alexa or Google, they can choose anything under the sun, anything they can think of. So the challenge is to get them to say, oh, I want to listen to your radio station or your show or your podcast or whatever it is.
So it's still being about a big brand.
Yeah, it's about making people want to listen. And radio has been able to rest on, hey, we'll be the default. When people are in their car, there's not many other choices. Now it's got to learn to fight and learn to compete, which is much harder.
So you just told me that the radio thing is the biggest pie in the audio business, but there's also a discussion if we should shut down FM in Europe, for instance, if DAB Plus and digital broadcast is the next big thing for radio or the future. And on the other hand, we have talks like this where we say, maybe Alexa or Apple's HomePod or OK Google, the Google home devices, are the next or the future devices and maybe the only device where people will listen to. So Should we just get rid of FM, rid of DAB+?
I think it's going to be quite some time before that's a good idea. I mean, I can certainly envision a future where FM is turned off all over the world perhaps, and even any broadcast mechanism, whether DAB or whatever it might be. And that everything is delivered over the internet essentially through 5G or whatever then 6G, whatever will come along next. But bear in mind that the car is a big place for radio consumption, and the average car on the road is 10 to 12 years old. The cars don't turn over every day, so cars with Alexa integration or Google Home integration or these really complicated modern systems, they'll only slowly make their way into people's cars.
That's right, but the car industry is highly motivated to integrate now with Apple's CarPlay or the Google technologies and even Alexa in the car, but they were never so motivated to implement DAB Plus in their cars.
Right. I mean, there's no grand deal that with the automotive industry that you must put a radio in those cars, right? They've done it because the consumer demanded it.
Exactly.
And so as long as consumers ask for it, they're going to keep putting radios in the car. If they ever get to the point where a car without a radio sells just as well as a car with a radio, then they'll make it optional or they'll just take it out of the car. But for now, most consumers are going to expect that radio in the car, and it's differentially going to keep them from buying a car. So they're not going to take it out anytime soon. But you can easily envision a day where they put everything on the same field. So you want to listen to that radio station, you can stream it through your phone and listen to the stream or something like that. So yeah, can I envision a day without FM or DAB or whatever, any kind of thing coming out of a tower? Absolutely. Or I shouldn't say that because the cell signal's coming out of a tower just the same. But where it's all one-to-one as opposed to broadcast, yeah, I can absolutely see that.
Yeah. Do you see also a big shift in the advertising industry for radio stations?
Actually, it's relatively slow. There's a lot in the United States. There's just a lot of legacy buys that have gone on for years and years. Radio still works. Radio advertising still works, and as long as that's the case, it's still going to get its share. Yes, it's under tremendous pressure from what everyone's under pressure from Google and Facebook, which are just slurping out all the money.
They're quite local.
What's that?
And they work quite locally.
Absolutely. And so they are a threat to everybody. And, they're big, giant sort of hungry companies that want to take everything. And so they have real challenges with regard to things like attribution, people knowing, oh, the ad on the radio drove that sale and things like that. So radio needs to work on that part. Radio has a lot of things to work on simultaneously, and radio needs to work on that as well.
Okay, so let's try to break this down to a few recommendations. If I would be the general manager of a local radio station, what would be your recommendations to me?
So let's go back to the Amazon Alexa and Google Home. If I had a radio station, I'm not joking either, at the top of every hour, I would instruct my audience how to invoke my radio station. Maybe on the first hour do Alexa, and the second hour do Google, maybe spice in a few Apple HomePods or whatever. But if you want people to listen on those devices, train your audience to do that. Teach them how, when people pull those things out of the box, they don't know what to ask for, they don't know what to think of. You have to plant the idea in their mind, oh, I will listen to this radio station. So that's something they can do right now. What I always say is there's a basketball term, American basketball term, flood the zone. Try to bring out everything. If people want podcasts, give them podcasts. Give them good podcasts. Invest in it. If people want streaming, invest in really top quality streaming. Many radio station streams are not high quality. Invest in and work together with other radio companies to make it easy. Right now, switching from this station to this station in your car or even at home or whatever is a super simple process. Doing it online is not easy. And so it's just easier to, I'll just do Spotify or whatever. So it's our challenge to make it easy for the consumers. Up till now, we've kind of made it hard.
Perfect. Great recommendations. We can just write them down and bring them to the PDs.
And everything will be perfect.
Everything will be perfect. So thanks for being here, Larry.
Of course,
it
happy
was
to.
A great pleasure
to
have you here in the interview.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you.